Hey guys, so I did my project on professional soccer using analytics, and I came up with a couple problems and a couple learnings from those problems um, that can be solved using analytics. So firstly, I came up with substitution times, and then which players are the best to recruit, and then a model that can solve that problem in both of those problems. So the first is substitutions. So there's 90 minutes in a soccer match. Halftime is at 45 minutes. And then substitutions are used to score more goals typically. They're typically used for strategy and injury, but in the study done that we're using the analytics for, it was for strategy and not injury that we're studying. So some strategy that you would use with substitution is to get fresh legs, somebody who hasn't played at all, into the game so that they can score more goals than the opposing team. Typically, defenders get tired between the 45th minute and the 90th minute, so to substitute a striker in within that time frame is typically ideal. So the study done here using analytics was to decide when those optimal minute times were to sub in your 3 substitutes that you're allowed per match. And it came up with the 58th minute, the 73rd minute, and the 79th minute. This is interesting because none of them are from the 80th to the 90th minute, and an insight from that is that if you substitute within the last 10 minutes of the game, typically a striker doesn't have enough time to get in form and to make sure that they can get in the rhythm of the game. So you want to give them enough time to do that, but you don't want to substitute them too early because the later you substitute them, the fresher their legs are compared to their opponents. The next thing that we're going to dive into is which players are the best to recruit. So some interesting stuff here. There are more than 50,000 professional soccer players in the world. So choosing which players you want to sign can be extremely difficult. So there's an analytical model you can use that will help you make those decisions. So you're going to measure different areas of skill in order to decide which 11 players will be the best to put on the field at the same time. So you're going to look at different areas, including passing success rate, which is if you try to pass the ball to one of your teammates, is that ball intercepted and stolen by the opposing team, or is it a successful pass? So as the passes are successful, the rate goes up, and as your balls are intercepted, the rate goes down. Other areas include shot percentage on target. So when you shoot, is the ball going on frame to where the goal is, or are you missing wide or high? Goals scored when striking, tackles won, and distance traveled, and corners won. Distance traveled is interesting because it shows that the more distance a player travels, the more fit he is, the more successful he is as a player, which is extremely interesting. And then with all of those areas and much more being analyzed, those are just some of the top areas that are analyzed, but there are hundreds of areas that can be analyzed. We can calculate a value system, and you can divide that by cost of the player, the cost of acquiring the player, because when you sign a player, obviously you pay for them, you pay their salary. So if you can analyze those skills and put them in the ASPOG AMO model, which basically describes what are the skills, and we're going to dive more into that in the next slide, and you can divide that by cost, then you can analyze how valuable a player is based on their cost. So now just to dive a little bit more into the model. So basically the model describes a player's positions, motions, trajectories, and the ball's actions as primitive building blocks. So it represents the interaction between the ball's actions, game situations, and effects of the ball's actions, and thereby allows for more comprehensive assessment of the games. It uses concepts such as scoring opportunities, being under pressure, and passing opportunities, classifying situations and interpreting the game events, and these concepts are defined transparently and therefore constitute objective criteria for classification and assessment. And these can be acquired automatically by a camera-based observation system, which basically means that there is a system that can capture all of these different statistics just by watching the game. So these calculations don't even have to be handled by hand, which is extremely impressive. So basically this, just to sum this up, this is basically all those skills I listed in the last slide, and way more being analyzed to see how successful a player is on a soccer pitch. Okay, so now some learnings from that model. The results. Yeah, so this was a bit frustrating for me. Just in doing my research, it's extremely hard to quantify the results of the decisions being made. And this is because there are so many factors that are subjective in soccer. For example, like a player's positioning as a ball is being played towards them can highly affect whether or not they win the ball. And if a player's positioning is totally subjective, coaches tell players to be in different areas, and that just can't be measured. Another place that can't be measured is a player's attitude, like how well they support the team as the team travels around the world to play other teams. So analytics can't fully encompass which players that you should choose to put on your team, but it really can help. And just in the sports world, it's really frustrating that analytics can't fully solve a problem, but they definitely should be used. Some areas that can be measured though, and with Toronto in the article I was reading, this is a prime example. They won more championships when analytics were being used. And it's just proven, I don't know if any of you guys have watched Moneyball, for example, in baseball and in soccer, that as you're purchasing lower cost players and they're still performing well, you can have increased competitiveness per cost of player, which is extremely important. So those are a few of the broad areas that can be measured, but I'm looking forward to the future when things can be measured. They're just more quantifiable. They will be in the future. And then some insights. Okay, so the earlier you find a player with analytics, the better because of resale. So if you find, this is so interesting, so if you find players that nobody's heard of that are young and you just have a few analytics on but don't have time to go see, and you bring them to try out and you see the success of using those analytics, you can develop them and then sell them to other teams. So there'll be a huge value increase just by using the little analytics you have on players. So finding them early is really important. Another insight is you can be competitive with a low budget. I feel like I've talked about that pretty extensively, so I won't say much more about it. And then the last and I think most important insight that I've learned from this whole thing is that players can be analyzed really well, but it's so much more important to just observe them as a quality manager. And assuming that all managers, which is just another word for coach, know what they're doing and can tell a good player from another, I think analytics should be used as a tool to help that, not as the primary resource for gaining quality players. Yeah, so those are my 3 insights. And then here's a link to the articles that I read about this if you guys want to dive into it a little more and you guys have a passion for soccer too. Yeah, thank you guys for watching.